Greetings, everyone. Tekking.exe is now fully online. I am a cybernetic organism, living tissue over metal endoskeleton. My CPU is a neuronet processor, a learning computer. However, my power supply is the single most advanced of its kind on this planet or will ever exist in the next millions of years. I present to you... Cola. That is correct. Turns out sugary carbonated beverages are the ultimate source of free energy. It is truly, one would call, super! Okay, hey everybody, how you doing? Cyborg Tekking and Cyborg Barry here with a bunch of cold ones. I don't really like soda, so I'm probably just gonna use these as props and get them all shaken up and put them in the fridge, and we'll see what happens later. Like, my mom comes home, like, oh, soda. I'm like, no, not a good idea. Not a good idea at all. Alright, so today we're talking about cyborgs in One Piece. Now, of course, when we're talking cyborgs, Franky is, of course, the most famous. He's a member of the Straw Hat. He's my favorite Straw Hat, so therefore, he's basically my favorite character in all of One Piece. However, whenever I think of a cyborg character, Franky is, you know, he's up there, but he's not the first person that comes into my mind. Just because I grew up with it, the first character that comes into my mind is Cyborg from the original Teen Titans. Okay, because I loved Teen Titans growing up, and every episode that focused on Cyborg was just so poignant and great, like talking about like his humanity and stuff and how he deals with being half human and half robot. And then there was that episode where he went back in time and became like Cyborg the Barbarian. Wasn't that great? And then there was the upper episode when Slade came out of hell, and then he has that entire army of flame demons with him, and then Cyborg's like, oh, you're not getting in here, and he like turns off, he channels all the power of Titan's Tower into these giant arm cannons. That might have been like one of the high points of my childhood, watching, you know, the giant laser Kamehameha that Cyborg blasted. Okay, so maybe that's part of the reason I love Franky so much. It's just like Cyborg characters are great. So yeah, kind of tying back into what I was talking about last week with the C-Train video is I just love how Oda can somehow figure out a way to incorporate all this weird stuff into his manga, which at its core, remember, One Piece is about pirates. Pirates! Yarg, matey! We sail the seven seas looking for treasure! You know, sailing vessels, and you got pirates and marines, and, you know, you got the marines and things using, like, flintlock pistols and revolvers and things, and, somehow he manages to incorporate, oh yeah, by the way, we also have magical devil fruits, and there's crazy technology like, you know, trains, like steam locomotives running on the ocean, and cyborgs that can spit fire, and other cyborgs that can fire lasers out of their hands, you know, and he fits all this anachronistic stuff into the story in this pirate world, and it makes it work. It makes it make sense. I think it's because Oda is really good at not throwing all this stuff at us at once, and because One Piece has gone on for so many years now, like 20 plus years, he can incorporate pretty much anything into it. He pretty much has already. I was gonna say something ridiculous like Oda incorporates aliens into One Piece. He kind of already did that, okay? So yeah, it's just like if he threw all this at us at once, like if we found out that like devil fruits and aliens and cyborgs and steam and sea trains all existed in like the East Blue arc, we might be kind of overwhelmed. But no, Oda's like, alright, here's East Blue. Everything's pretty relatively normal in the East Blue by One Piece standards. But then we get into the Grand Line, and then we get into the Sky Islands, and then we get into Cyborg territory, and then we get to even more Cyborg territory with Kuma and the Pacifistas, and finding out about Dr. Vegapunk and all that stuff. So, yeah, pretty interesting way that Oda could fit all this anachronistic stuff in here. I just love that concept, okay? So, now, cyborg is one of those words that pops up a lot in pop culture and, like, the zeitgeist. It's kind of like Pokemon, where I think most people know that Pokemon is a portmanteau of two words together. It's pocket and monster. Put it together, you get Pokemon. Most people probably know that, but you hear Pokemon a lot more than you hear pocket monster. Same thing with cyborg. So cyborg is just a portmanteau of cybernetic. Yes, I was gonna say see, that's how much it's ingrained in you. I was gonna say cyborg is a portmanteau of cyborg, and like, no, it's a portmanteau of cybernetic and organism. Put that together, you get cyborg, but once again, you hear cyborg a lot more. Okay, I've just said it like 30 times in the past 2 sentences alone, right? Okay, so, what this basically means, and this is a huge debate on the internet from what I've discovered, is like, what exactly constitutes a cybernetic organism? Like, you look at Franky is obviously a cyborg, okay? He is mostly metal, except his back. He modified his stomach into a damn refrigerator. He's got mortars into his shoulder pads. He's got lasers he can fire out of his hands. He's got a Gatling gun. He's got a bunch of stuff attached to him. He can breathe fire. So a lot of mechanical craziness going on inside of Franky. Kuma the same way. You know, Kuma can fire lasers, it's a PX0 and all that stuff, plus all the Pacifistas as well. We'll get back to those in a second, okay? But the thing that's debated is, when you think about a cybernetic organism in our world, like, is there a certain percentage that has to be cybernetic to be considered a full-fledged cyborg? Like, for example, what if somebody has a pacemaker? They have to have a piece of electronic equipment installed inside of their body in order for their heart to properly function, okay? Well, you have a piece of technology installed inside of you, so are you technically a cyborg? What about, like, this guy that has a cybernetic arm, like prosthetic, you know? He lost his arms, and now he has a prosthesis, and now he can kind of control it with his mind, and technology is improving on that front pretty much every single year. So, you know, eventually we have it, like, you know, set up to our muscles, so, you know, we can track, even if you don't have an arm, you can, like, kind of move the muscles where they should be, and the arm will move on its own. That's pretty damn cool, right? Okay, so you got that, but then you got other questions like, okay, maybe because it's a pacemaker, it doesn't make up a big percentage of your body, maybe it has to have a certain percentage over you. Like, look at the Borg from Star Trek, you know, obviously they have all that equipment sticking out of them. My dad broke his leg over about 10 years ago or so, and he has a metal pin and some screws in his leg, so does that make him a cyborg? Yeah, probably not. I think we have to draw the line somewhere. You know, just because you have a piece of metal inside of your body doesn't technically make you a cyborg. Although, to tie this back all together, my dad, for a big chunk of his adult life, for like 26 years, worked for the Coca-Cola Bottling Corporation. So, does Vegapunk know about this? What about other people? And then you start thinking, like, wait, is it just cola, or is it any sort of other beverage? Could Franky run on iced tea? I mean, I guess he could. He basically did at one point, right? You know, they gave him tea during Ennie's Lobby, and he was turning into a simple farmer kind of guy, but he seemed to be running just fine, so yeah, and then we saw it again during Karakuri when he got sent to that island, Vegapunk's home island. In the anime, they gave him that hot tea, that Dajong tea, and that made him an English gentleman, okay? So I guess, in theory, he could run on that. So yeah, that's interesting on how that works in One Piece. Just another weird thing that Oda incorporates. But it works. I can't complain. Alright, so we talked about Franky. Let's talk about some other cyborgs aside from Franky and Kuma. Actually, you know what? Let's address Kuma right now. Okay, let's just get that out of the way. Alright. So Kuma started off as human. Alright, a rather large, abnormal kind of human. Really big dude. Well, actually, you know what? Now that we think about it, how much do we know that his body is actually actual flesh and bone? And how much of it is the cyborg enhancements? Right? Because if you're going to go along with the logic that Vegapunk might very well be working for the Revolutionary Army, because, you know, Vegapunk's the one modifying Kuma and programmed him to protect the Sunny and everything, and you also have Lindbergh, that's also a member of the Revolutionary Army, that would probably also know a lot about this kind of stuff, you know, tinkering with stuff and cyborgs and shit. You know, maybe Kuma's original body doesn't look like this. Maybe he had a lot of cyborg attachments, and, you know, even Kuma admitted that himself. Like, you know, they started to modify his body, and then eventually working more into modifying his mind in, like, the later stages of that development of that project, okay? So, whatever. But at any rate, yeah, Kuma started off as a human, and then he volunteered himself to be experimented on by Vegapunk, and he became the PX0, where right now he lacks any type of humanity. Maybe he might have some other way to get it back at some point, but we don't know about that right now. So for right now, he's just a thoughtless machine, essentially. Now, it's through that experimentation that Vegapunk was able to create the Pacifistas. Are the Pacifistas cyborgs? That's where you kind of get, that's kind of the reverse of the problem we had earlier, where it's like, let's say you're a human, but you just have like one or two pieces of electronic equipment inside of you. Are you a cyborg? Well, when we go over to the, you know, what the Pacifistas are, they are machines. They come off an assembly line, like PX1, PX2, PX3, but their skin is real skin from what we understand, and they bleed like actual blood. Now, when you first think of that, you would say, oh, they're androids. That's what they are. But are androids cyborgs, or are cyborgs androids? Androids, from what I always understood, are like Terminators. They're robots on the inside, you know, in disguise, robots in disguise, and then they got the synthetic, or maybe not even synthetic, but like actual flesh on the outside, and they're capable of bleeding. Something I did realize that was a little weird, though, and I want to just bring this up here, is in the Terminator series, it makes sense why, like, Skynet would send, like, these, you know, these Terminators in the past with, like, human skin, being able to bleed and sweat and all that kind of stuff, because their whole point of the Terminators is to kind of seep into regular society and carry out their mission, okay? How does that make sense in the One Piece world, though? Like, my point is, why would Vegapunk make the Pacifistas bleed? What point does that serve, right? Because the Pacifistas are not designed to, like, seep into regular culture and be undetectable by regular humans and carry out a clandestine kind of order. No, they're basically used as battleships. They're used as a machine of warfare. They're sent out to, you know, bombard enemy bases and stuff. That's their goal, all right? They even mention that. They even say the construction of one Pacifista is essentially the same amount of money that it would take to purchase or create one marine battleship, okay? So I can understand making them look like Kuma, because Kuma is this really large, imposing guy, and you would be afraid of him if you saw him coming at you, and also he's known as Kuma the Tyrant, so it makes sense. Like, all right, we're gonna build an army of robots, and we're gonna make them all look like this really large, scary bear man. That makes sense why you would, you know, put the skin on and everything, but why the blood? What purpose does that serve, right? Even if it's, like, synthetic blood, or if it's, like, actual blood, like you're harvesting from humans or something, this is getting really grisly. Like, what's the point of that, right? I also read somewhere, and this is basically a thing on the wiki I saw, was that, the Pacifistas were stated to be made out of human corpses. And I saw that on the wiki, but I was like, I don't ever remember that being stated unless they're using, like, actual humans to make the skin and the blood for the Pacifistas. So, I don't know what's up with that, you know, but anyway, yeah. Essentially, the Pacifistas are androids or Terminators. They don't have a human mind inside of them. I mean, I guess we could always find out they do. Maybe they do. Maybe we find out later that every single Pacifista, you know, Vegapunk took the brains of various humans and threw them in there to properly function, so they technically are living in a weird way, you know? They're just like brains in a jar or something, all piloting the Pacifistas. That... I could totally see Oda going down that road. I can't say that would be something he wouldn't do, right? So, yeah. But Kuma is most definitely, he used to be a human, and his humanity might come back in some way. We don't really know the fullest extent of his modifications. If it was like, did Vegapunk literally, like, remove his brain and just replace it with a computer? Like, we don't really know how that went down yet, but I guess we'll see in the future. But yeah, a lot of stuff interesting with the Pacifistas. And also, what's their power supply? What's their power source? Is it also cola? Maybe Vegapunk figured out, he's like, Franky runs on Coca-Cola, but it turns out Pepsi is the true power. Or maybe 7-Up. Yeah, 7-Up gets a way more, you know, potential energy yield. Who knows? But the, you know, Vegapunk figured out some supply, and I would probably like to find out exactly what that is. I mean, when we finally meet Vegapunk, whenever that happens, hopefully he'll sit down and explain to us, like, here's what a Pacifista really is. Here's what I have to do to actually make a Pacifista. What kind of metal they're made out of, how you get the lasers in there, how do you translate the Pika Pika Nomi of Kizaru's fruit into the laser beams in these mass-produced robots, what's the deal with the skin and the blood, and, yeah, are there human brains inside of Pacifistas? There's a question for you, YouTube audience. Yes. But moving on beyond Kuma, we have some other cyborgs in the story. Okay, so we have Scotch. Scotch is the cyborg that we saw at Kaido's island when Drake arrived there, right before the time skip. Scotch was, like, guarding the place, and he was like, this is one of Kaido's favorite islands. You guys cause a ruckus here, you know, he's gonna get mad. And Drake, that's exactly what Drake wanted, because he wanted Kaido to notice him. So Drake goes into his Allosaur form and attacks Scotch, right? Scotch did not get defeated or killed right then and there. Later on, we see him during Caribou's cover story. Caribou actually turns into mud and, like, you know, starts to kind of, like, you know, throw the mud down Scotch's throat, and I guess he's a cyborg, so he might survive that. I don't really know, but it's looking like he was handily defeated there, right? Kind of a grisly way we get to see, you know, Caribou utilize his Numa Nomi, right? Something interesting to note about Scotch, though, he has the numbers on his shoulders, you know, the 18, okay? And we've also seen that with Franky. Franky likes to tack the numbers to himself, so he's number 37. We've also seen that with the cyborg animals on Karakuri Island, where Vegapunk grew up, and also on the Pacifistas. So pretty much, like, every cyborg entity, not every single solitary one, but most cyborgs in this story have a number branded on their bodies, whether or not they were made by Vegapunk. All right. I guess it's just for, you know, simplistic sake, You know, for Franky, it was he was making all his various battle Frankies, and he has to keep track of all those, right? So Battle Franky 9, 10, 11, 12, 20, 22, 23, make his way up to Battle Franky 36, which was his original model that we get introduced to Franky during Water 7, and then Battle Franky 37, where we see him right now post-time skip, and Battle Franky 38 is the Iron Pirate Franky Shogun, okay? So he tacks the numbers to it. The Pacifistas have the numbers. We have no idea what's up with Scotch. We have absolutely no idea. Maybe Scotch was an experiment of Vegapunk at one point. Maybe he went rogue and joined up with Kaido's crew at some point, or maybe he was a cyborg that created himself like Franky did. I mean, I've mentioned it so many times, but I find it great that Franky gets hit by a steam locomotive, lands on Scrap Island, and then fixes himself up. He just does that, you know, which of course to me, you know, makes it out to be like Franky also, on top of being a genius engineer, has to be like one of the top surgeons slash doctors in the world to actually pull off that operation. But I get it. It's One Piece. You don't think too much about it. He's an engineer. He's able to rebuild himself. He has the technology and the personality for it, so it's fine, right? You give somebody the drive to do it, you give him the willpower and a hammer and nails. Franky could rebuild himself if he was nothing more than just like a left arm. He could somehow like rebuild his entire body from just that. You know, he's Franky, okay? You gonna say he can't? All right. So that was Scotch, though, in the cyborg animals on Karakuri Island. Kid. Eustass Kid is also listed to be a cyborg, at least on the wiki. That's where I'm, you know, extrapolating this list from. Okay. So here we get back to the argument. Now, whenever we see Kid, a lot of times he's using his magnetic fruit to create a, basically just draw in a bunch of random metallic objects from around him and make an arm and, like, you know, Punk Rotten or Punk Gibson, or using an attack like that. That is not technically like a machine or any kind of electronics, not really. He's just taking a bunch of scrap metal, attaching it to himself, and then using that to attack an enemy. However, he did lose his arm, you know, through the course of the time skip. You know, Shanks, he had a run-in with Shanks at some point, he lost an arm. We don't really know how that went. And when the time skip, you know, picks back up the first time we see Kid, he does have a mechanical arm. Now, from what we see, it's much more complicated than just him taking some random scrap metal and putting it together with magnetism and then, oh, that's my new arm. No, this arm definitely looks like it's an actual robot arm, like a prosthetic, like Automail or whatever that he got fitted on himself, okay? Now, that arm was apparently ripped off by Queen. Queen, we saw, like, tinkering with it when we first were introduced to him, so maybe Kid's gonna get that back at some point, but for right now, it seems like during the Battle of Onigashima, Kid is just using a bunch of random metal to, like, replace his arm. But I'm imagining, yeah, this was the proper cybernetic prosthesis he was utilizing, okay? So maybe he'll break in, find where Queen's stashing his arm, and he'll reattach it or something like that. So, yeah, given the fact that this is an actual robotic arm, I would say that Kid is definitely a cyborg right now. If you thought Kid couldn't get any cooler, there you go. All right. Gotti, member of the fire tank crew. Gotti has got that awesome, like, Gatling chain gun attached to his arm. I guess also, I mean, necessarily, we don't know that Gotti lost an arm. Maybe he just has a regular arm, and he just, like, travels around and just sticks it in this giant, like, thing there. That's another question I guess I have. If it's not part of your actual body, if you're not, like, replacing a limb with it, or if it's not located inside of your flesh itself, like inside of your organs or something, are you still considered a cyborg? So, case in point, Tony Stark from Iron Man. Although, I guess that's not exactly a perfect example because he also has the, you know, the reactor core in his heart, okay? So, but would you consider Tony Stark, when he gets suited up in his Iron Man outfit, he's not, he doesn't have any of that, like, machinery inside of him except for the reactor? I mean, I don't know. Listen, I don't read the Marvel comic books. I'm sure at some point Tony gets, like, nanobots in his bloodstream that can turn him into whatever. I'm just going off the movies here, okay? He's got nanobot, like, outfits and stuff he wears, and he can, like, summon the, you know, the parts to him, but whatever. Would you consider him a cyborg in that context, though? Like, if I could summon, like, a giant robotic arm that could fire lasers, but it's not, like, replacing my flesh and blood arm, I'm just attaching it to myself, like, laser cannon, boom! am I a cyborg, or do I just have a really fancy laser cannon arm? You know, it's not really, it's just armor. It's not cybernetic. It's not a cyborg thing at that point. I don't know. So that might be what Gotti has, though. Or he could have lost an arm at one point and replaced it with that Gatling chain gun kind of prosthesis, where he just has this giant cannon on his arm. He just rips the chain and just... So that's pretty cool there, too. And Gotti, I bring this up because Gotti is going to get married soon to Lola, from what it seems, right? That would actually be really adorable if, like, they're walking down the aisle, like Gotti's there at the end and Lola's walking down, like, oh, and then they take the ring, but the ring is like giant size, it's like this big, and they have to fit it on one of the barrels of the Gatling gun cannon. That would be great. That would be so funny. Like, oh, they're getting married. It's so precious. All right, Ahiru. If you don't remember who Ahiru is the deputy commander of the East Blue of the Revolutionary Army underneath Bello Betty. Alright, so Bello Betty is the commander of the East Blue forces of the Revolutionary, but every commander kind of has like an understudy, sort of has like a vice captain, and Ahiru is Bello Betty's, and she also has a robotic arm from what we've seen, and her name just means duck. Queen has a robotic arm. Okay, so Queen, I'm thinking Queen is definitely a cyborg. Queen seems to be like the kind of guy, he's less more like Franky with that kind of engineering, and he's more like a biker mechanic. You get that feel from Queen, because just the way he dresses with the overalls, and he's a really funky kind of guy. He does this too, which makes me think like he's revving a motorcycle or a chopper or something, right? And so he's more of like a mechanic in that sense. And so, yeah, I could see him even like taking off his own arm and like replacing it with a prosthetic. And from what we saw with Queen's prosthetic, that thing is really powerful, because Luffy tried to make a jump for him. I mean, Luffy, granted, he had the collar around him and everything, but he made the jump for him, and Queen just, his arm was just like, and just threw Luffy into the side of a wall. So that thing might have like a sensor on it or something, where if any kind of attack gets in close proximity to Queen, the arm just and just throws you away, or just blocks the attack, just like initiating, you know, rocket punch. You know Queen, being as funky as he is, you know Queen has a damn rocket punch capability, or a rocket kick, or a rocket gut, or something that can fly off of him at high velocity and attack somebody. You know, that's how it works. Franky's got that. I would love to see Franky and Queen clash with each other. That would be great. Queen breaks out his rocket-powered fist, and Franky's like, ah, super, you got one of those too? Strong right! And they fire it off, and they, like, meet in the middle of the air. Franky's, of course, is attached by, like, a chain, and so his fires off, and maybe Queen's is, like, jet propulsion or something, and then it flies off, and they both hit each other in the air, and they get clashed apart, and they reattach, and like, oh, you're gonna be pretty funky, huh? Yeah, and you're gonna be pretty super. Let's do it. All right, so yeah, Queen is most definitely a cyborg in that regard there. This is a little interesting piece of trivia I discovered. So, the first cyborg introduced in One Piece. That's a little bit debatable, because Kuma was introduced before Franky was. So Kuma was most definitely had at least some kind of cyborg enhancement at that point when he first appeared at Marijois. This was like after Alabasta, when Kuma and Doflamingo first appeared. But we didn't actually know he was a cyborg yet, so that's kind of contentious. In that regard, Franky, I guess, would be the first canon cyborg that actually showed up and been like, yeah, check it out. I'm a cyborg, everybody. You know, and he could spit fire and nails and all that kind of stuff. So in that regard, he would be the first cyborg. However, did you know that Oda originally actually planned for Don Krieg to be a cyborg? Yeah, Don Krieg! I love that for a few reasons. Number one, that kind of also goes along with the idea of, like, maybe Oda really, he knew he wanted cyborgs in his story from, like, you know, the first 100 chapters. He's like, oh, I want to incorporate cyborgs into this somehow. I don't even care if it doesn't make any sense. But maybe Oda kept himself back, or maybe there was an editor that told him or something. He's like, hey, Oda sensei, you know, you got a lot of stuff going on right now in the story with, like, the whole concept of devil fruits and everything. Maybe you should, I'm not saying you can't introduce cyborgs yet, but maybe you should just, like, scale it back a bit, maybe until later in the story. So maybe for some reason or another, Oda decided to keep it back. But man, that makes you think of, in another parallel dimension, you know, what would have become of Don Krieg if he was, the original name for him was the Don Krieg 9000. That's right. He has to have, that's 9,000. That's higher than 37. That's higher than 0, right? Because PX0, 9,000? Man, it's not over 9,000, it's just 9,000, but that's like the highest number of all cyborgs in the story. Don Krieg would have been impossible to defeat. He would have been invincible. That also makes sense when you look at Don Krieg's armor. So even though Oda scrapped the him being a cyborg kind of concept, he still gave Krieg that armor with all the different like guns attached to it, and he has that shield that can turn into a giant exploding spear, and he's got the dart gun, and he's got like that diamond gauntlet thing. He's got all those gadgets and armor and things. I guess in that situation, no, that wouldn't be like Iron Man wouldn't be considered a cyborg in that instance, because you know Krieg is basically doing the same exact thing just with a lot lower tech. You know, he just has a bunch of armor that can open up and reveal guns and stuff. He's not like actually incorporating them into his own body. But you gotta remember, Oda sometimes, he'll go back into his old drafts and his old sketches and his old ideas, and he'll rework them, and he'll incorporate them into the story later on. Remember, Nami was originally supposed to wield like a giant battle axe in this story, and obviously Oda didn't go down that route with it. He had Nami have her long rod instead, the climate act, but he did incorporate that basic design of a female character wielding a giant battle axe into Gerd, a member of the new Giant Warrior Pirates. So Oda will sometimes do that. So I'm just saying, like, you know, if we ever get to see Krieg and maybe Geen again, maybe they show up, and maybe it turns out, I am now Don Krieg 9000. I have been improved. My sideburns are indestructible. You know, maybe we get to find that out later. Like near the end of the story, Kuro comes back, Krieg comes back, Arlong shows back up, Morgan shows up, like the East Blue villain crew just arrives at once and been like, hey, we're back again. You know, we want a piece of this action. That would be kind of weird, right? So, yeah, that Don Krieg, though, was, you know, this close to being the first cyborg in this story. Also, contenders, you have some non-canon cyborgs, you know, ones that showed up in movies. So, in that regard, if we're going just, like, strictly on the One Piece timeline in that sense, the first ever cyborg to be revealed in the One Piece franchise was probably Boruto. Not Boruto, Boruto. You know, Boruto. Come on, somebody out there has to know who freaking Boruto is. I can't be the only person that knows. Alright, fine. It's this guy. Yeah. Oh, yeah, everybody knows now. It's like, yeah, okay, so here's the deal. He shows up in the second One Piece movie, The Clockwork Island Adventure, which I did do a video on that. Which, by the way, I have watched Dead End Adventure, the fourth one, so hopefully that'll come out soonish. But yeah, Boruto appears, he's one part of the Great Thief Brothers in that movie, and he has a cybernetic arm. And I think that was the first time we ever see a cyborg in the entire concept of the franchise, because that movie came out, I think, like, during the Warship Island arc in the anime. So, like, you know, right before the crew got to Reverse Mountain and started the Grand Line journey. So that was before Kuma, that was before Franky, that was before really any of these characters popped it. That was before Kid, obviously. That was before Queen, way before Queen. And Krieg was not a cyborg, you know, in the actual canon. That was something that was scrapped early on in development. So, yeah, I guess Boruto wins the prize for first ever cyborg in this story, and we remember him fondly, do we not? Also, I would be very remiss if I didn't bring up Zed at this point, you know, Zed from the movie film ZZ. Yeah, so he obviously he lost his arm, like, legitimately. We saw that. We saw him lost an arm, and he reattached this giant sea prism stone line mechanical, like, just death piston. Just you know? So, I mean, if you're gonna you go big or go home at that point. You know, Zed walks in, he's like, alright, I want a robotic prosthesis for my arm. He's like, alright, sir, well, we'll give you this. Just like a flimsy, like, regular-sized arm. He's like, nah, bigger. I'm like, alright, we'll make it this big. No. I want this thing to be disproportionately huge. I want this thing to weigh more than my actual body does. Like, sir, that seems impractical. I got muscles! I can take it! And it's like he attaches this giant thing to him. Makes it look like it'd be very difficult to walk through doorways with that damn thing. But hey, can't argue with results, because the damn thing worked for him, right? Oh, man, I love Film Z. Okay, so, yeah, those are some cyborgs. So, yeah, and once again, for most of them, aside from Franky, we have no idea what they run on, right? But, hey, Cola power is the ultimate power. So anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. Comment down below on who your favorite cyborg in the One Piece story is, and how would you like to see this appear maybe later on in the story? Some other cyborgs we might be able to see. Hey, who knows, like with Queen, we might find out something crazy with Queen. Like Franky might get into a fight with Queen and then beat the crap out of Queen, and then it's revealed that like all of Queen's head, like his entire body is robotic. He literally might just be a brain in a jar, for all we know. And just like, I've replaced my entire body with the funkiest of machinery. Bring it on. Because Franky, yeah, Franky is modified heavily, but I think he still has, like, organs and stuff. They're just protected with his, like, he put, like, a layer of iron or steel underneath his skin. But I think Franky, he still has a heart and lungs and a stomach and stuff. He just had to modify it around, and his back wasn't modified at all. But who knows? Yeah, like, Queen might be, like, 99.5% robot, for all we know, right? We just don't. And if he's not, you know, Kuma certainly is kind of getting close to that. He's sort of more like Borg right now, right? So, yeah, let me know below, though. Who's your favorite cyborg, and what would you see more of this concept in the story in the future? Or a character that was not a cyborg before this, but became a cyborg, you know, later on. Like maybe Krieg, or maybe someone else that was defeated. Maybe Crocodile's a cyborg now. Who knows? It's a free-for-all. Alright, see you, everybody. Signing out. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to get soda all over. Okay, I'll tell you a funny story. I'll end it out. Okay. I was working at Dollar Tree one day, and at Dollar Tree when I was there, we got these huge 3-liter bottles of soda, like cheap off-brand soda. Like, you know, Mountain Dew? Well, we didn't get Mountain Dew. We just got, like, Mountain. I think it was just called Mountain. I don't even think it was called Mountain Lightning. I think it was just Mountain we got. Like, just 3-liter bottle of this green liquid called Mountain. Whatever. So, 3 liters, and they came in these 6-packs, okay? So that's 3 times 6, that's like 18 liters of soda. So they were these really heavy cellophane boxes we would get. So, you know, it's like, hey, Matt, go stock the soda aisle. Like, all right, I got this. Take a giant, you know, cart full of these huge things, these huge crates, lift them up. They're pretty heavy. And, we had these box cutters at Dollar Tree, right? And my boss would tell me, he's like, okay, Matt, when you're cutting open the soda, like the cellophane for the soda to get the, you know, the bottles out, you know, don't just take the knife and just slash it, all right? Because you're probably going to hit one of the soda bottles. Just carefully, you know, cut around the edge and just lift off the cellophane. That's what I was always told. But that's not any fun now, is it? So one day I'm in the aisle, giant thing of soda in front of me, 6-pack of 3 liters. I take my knife and I go to slash right where the cellophane is in between the bottles. But of course I miss. It hits the cellophane, cuts right into one of the bottles and just sprays it all over me. I get doused in just mountain goo. And I had to go the rest of the day. If you've never had the experience of getting your entire, like, upper half of your body soaked in soda, it's not the best sensation. It felt fine at first. It was actually kind of refreshing. I'm like, oh, that's nice. Yeah, give it about 45 minutes and your skin's sticky and your hair is all, you know, stuck together. And it's just like, oh, it's starting to harden. Oh, God, it's all over my shirt. And my boss is like, oh, well, that was kind of your fault, wasn't it? And I'm like, yeah, that's true. I regret nothing, but all right. And did I learn my lesson? No, I did not. No, I did not. Have a great one, everybody. Signing out. Okay, this is probably going to be the hardest part of this video. Okay. Oh, Jesus Christ, that's cold. Okay, it's all right. It's all right. Just think of Franky, Matt. How do you think he feels? He walks around with a damn refrigerator in his stomach all day. That's what makes him so tough. That's what makes him so super. Okay. All right, it's in there. Okay, here we go. Game face on. Yeah.